All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the riteSCAN webinar on stock takes and new hardware trends. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sue Pogachnik, and I'm the marketing manager here at RiteSoft, and I'll be helping moderate today's session. We're pleased we have two speakers with us today. First, we have Ryan, one of our RiteSoft implementation and support specialists, and he's going to talk about the true costs of manual inventories and help you get a deeper understanding of how riteSCAN can streamline stock takes and increase your accuracy. Then we have Will Barnett from emkat, one of our leading partners, hardware partners, who will talk about the latest hardware trends and hardware options. But before we get started, feel free to submit your questions via the chat function. We'll review the questions at the end of the presentation. And if you have any technical issues, let us know via the chat function. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ryan.
All right, thank you very much, Sue, and welcome everyone today. Thanks for joining us on our webinar, and with that, I'm just going to start diving in and talking about what we're all here to hear about with inventory and really understanding how riteSCAN can help improve that. On average, inventory accounts for about 15% of U.S. public firms' assets, and there are a number of costs that are often overlooked when it comes to inventory management. Errors is going to be the very biggest one. Manual data entry often results in incorrect inventory information. On average, humans make one error for every 300 characters. So just think about how often people are manually entering data and how many errors that take place during that process. This is what leads to inaccurate inventory levels, which can have unnecessary reorders, potential stockouts, and ignoring inventory management practices that are going to ensure the accuracy out in your warehouse. The second one that is very common is time and money. The drawback with this is the amount of time that it takes to enter data manually, and the time lag within that data information is going to cause errors within your inventory and ultimately the trustworthiness you have within your inventory and your systems. Warehousing costs is another large problem. Ultimately, inventory inaccuracies bloat your inventory levels and increase warehouse space requirements. This ties up critical capital and impacts the ability to innovate and grow their business in today's increasingly competitive global market. Customer and employee satisfaction is one that often goes overlooked, but the inaccuracies inherent in manual inventories lead to stockouts, mispicks, and causes unhappy customers ultimately. And not only that, it also frustrates your employees because they're unable to do anything about it. They don't have the correct tools within their hands to reduce these errors and ensure that customer satisfaction as well. So we're going to be a stock take hero today and take a look at how we can implement a warehouse management solution for stock takes and overall inventory management to increase your accuracy levels of inventory in a very streamlined methodology. So let's take a look from a high level what stock take processes look like with riteSCAN as well as SYSPRO. The first step in the process is going to be setting up that stock take or cycle count in SYSPRO. And then once you do that, the next step is going to be actually going out and capturing that information. And you're going to use riteSCAN to capture that information out in the warehouse and send it directly back into SYSPRO. So once all of the counts are complete, they can then be reviewed in SYSPRO and adjustments can be made to inventory as necessary to get the correct inventory levels within your warehouse. So now that we've seen it from a high level, we're going to go ahead and take a much deeper look at what that actually looks like from a process perspective in SYSPRO and in riteSCAN and how they all tie together. So let's go ahead and we're going to start in the SYSPRO stock take selection module. So if you're not familiar, we're going to be in that stock take selection module in SYSPRO and begin the process by setting up our stock take or cycle count. Then you're going to have the ability to select the parameters of what we're going to be counting within inventory, whether you're planning to count a specific warehouse, a specific bin, or maybe you're recounting a specific stock code that you may have as well. You're going to select those parameters within the system, and once you've defined those parameters, you're able to go ahead and print those tickets and move on to the next steps in the process of actually going out to the warehouse and counting. So now that you've set all those parameters and you've dispersed the tickets to a list of your warehouse staff, you're often going to want to train your team on correct counting processes. Often stock take discrepancies may stem from basic miscounting of products, selecting the wrong unit of measure, or counting the incorrect stock codes. However, through the use of riteSCAN, it really helps prevent these errors through scanning barcodes and providing visibility to the operators on the count processes that are actually taking place out in the warehouse versus the manual paper processes that may be in place today. So to actually perform the physical count in riteSCAN, the operator is going to log into the riteSCAN, whether it's on a handheld or a tablet or a computer with a wireless Bluetooth reader, lots of different options. And then they're going to actually go into the inventory tab and select the stock take icon to begin the process. So that's going to be that icon right in the bottom left there. Once you've done that, they're going to be prompted with the screen that you see here, and they're going to scan or enter the warehouse. If you're a multi-bin company, they'll also enter the bin location that they're counting, and then they can go ahead and scan the stock code as well. After they've done that, they can go ahead and actually perform the count process of counting how many products are in the location or area that they're counting right now. Once they've done that, they're going to go ahead and enter the quantity at this stage. And notice there is also a unit of measure. So you can select the unit of measure that's being used to perform the count process. And you want to ensure that your operators pay attention to that unit of measure so they understand what they're counting and what unit of measure they're counting the products in as well when they're going through that scan process. If it's a lot traceable item, the operator is going to be prompted to scan or enter that lot number associated with the stock code. If you use serial numbers within your warehouse, the operator is going to be prompted to scan the serial number that's associated with the stock code. This ensures that riteSCAN is consistently validating against SYSPRO and your stock that you're getting the correct data that is needed for each of the stock codes. So for example, if I'm counting a product that's not a lot traceable item, you're going to see on the screen the lot field is actually grayed out, and it doesn't require the operator to go through and enter any of that information. So it's guiding the user through these steps as they're going through the stock take to capture the required information that is needed by the system. The other thing I like to note is the reference field at the bottom there. Often I like to set up with our customers the ability to default this field with a certain variable, whether it's riteSCAN. Otherwise, some people I like to set it up with RS and then the username. And this gives you one step further of visibility so I can actually see when somebody performed a count process, specifically where it was done and who did it. And you can default all of that within the admin setting to automate that process of getting that information into the system. So now that they've went through the actual count process and entered all of the data that's required, they're going to post this information to SYSPRO. So as soon as they select post, it's going to display a successful message to the operator, and they can go ahead and either count the next location or count the next stock code that is required from their pick ticket at that time as well. And they're just going to repeat those steps until all of this is complete. So the stock take data, when it's posted, is sent directly into SYSPRO using SYSPRO's E.NET business objects to provide a seamless integration between the systems. This means that you don't have to wait for data to be manually entered into SYSPRO anymore. The data is captured at the same time that they're counting this and sent directly into SYSPRO, resulting in more efficient and accurate stock take processes. Now that all of the operators have completed the count process, the supervisor or warehouse manager has the ability to view the progress of the stock take results in SYSPRO. So for all the transactions that have gone through riteSCAN, they're able to view the progress of what's been counted against what's expected to be counted in the system at this time. Excuse me, guys. Upon viewing the results, the supervisor can also evaluate and resolve discrepancies in the inventory, or if everything looks good and as expected, they can actually accept the stock take. So what that means is once they accept the stock take, it's going to make all of the necessary adjustments to inventory with what was actually counted. So if there's any discrepancies, it's going to make all those adjustments at that time to make sure everything is insured and correct as well moving forward. So let's talk about some of the common reasons for stock take discrepancies that companies run into. The first one's very basic, and it's miscounts. The discrepancy could be a result of simply an operator miscounting the product, or the original counting process that took place earlier made you guys start out with bad inventory levels. Units of measure is often a common one as well. Perhaps the wrong unit of measure was used in the count process, so instead of using eaches, they counted in cartons and things. Make sure that all of the employees and people involved in the physical count are trained in the count procedures and understand the inventory and the units of measures that are used out in the warehouse to prevent these errors ahead of time. Mistaken identity is often another one that's common. Items could be mistaken for a similar product, or counting staff may not realize that the same product in a different color or a different size technically is a different product or SKU within your system. Receiving is another common one. So stock could have been received into inventory incorrectly, leading to the errors earlier downstream before you even get to the stock take section. So a receipt could have been recorded as 100 when really only 10 were actually received into inventory. Labeling is one that is not quite as common of an error, but while it is possible that stock could be labeled with the wrong product code or the wrong barcode within your inventory as well. Put away is the ability, if a large number of items may be missing from your inventory, you may want to check to see that they were put away into the correct location. They could have been put into a different bin location than what was actually recorded in the system, causing a bin location's inventory to be more or less than what it actually should be. You also may want to check to verify that sales orders have not been accounted for in this inventory take process, ensuring that something isn't staged and then being counted into your inventory as well. Stock take loss is the overall just loss of stock. We all realize that this happens without always being able to track down the exact cause of where the mysterious disappearing inventory went to. And it's just a natural occurrence within our inventory. Even though we all want to prevent this, it's something that happens as well. In terms of really preventing these errors, we want to talk about how riteSCAN can help prevent these errors and what enhancements riteSCAN has made to improve our product's accuracy and efficiency, even one step further than the typical barcode scanning to prevent errors. So if you're not familiar with SmartScan, this was a feature that was added to riteSCAN that allows companies to utilize a barcode containing multiple pieces of data within a single barcode. And what that means, riteSCAN allows the operator to scan a single barcode, and riteSCAN will automatically apply the correct data to the correct fields in riteSCAN, allowing the operator to save time only having to scan once, and it applies all of the data that's necessary into the correct fields within riteSCAN. As we talk about SmartScan, a lot of times people have questions regarding 1D and 2D barcodes and how that really works together. Will, do you just want to talk a little bit about the difference between 1D and 2D barcodes and the benefits of utilizing 2D barcodes within your operations?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah. So, of course, one of the key benefits of a 2D barcode is the fact that it can contain quite a bit more data. And so how it's utilized by SmartScan, of course, it leverages this as a platform to be able to put in multiple items of data. So more than just your traditional barcode or location. This is now including things that we see here. There are some other benefits, though, outside of this, even for people that are just getting started with 2D. Maybe you're only using it for something like a location. There's still benefits for that as well, on the labeling side as well as on the scanning side. And so a couple of the benefits outside of just being able to contain more data would be scan distance. Typically a similar size barcode to your traditional 1D barcode in 2D form will actually scan a little bit further than a standard 1D barcode. So there's one benefit right off the bat from that. The physical size, so the space it takes up on your racking, on your product, is actually going to be a little smaller. So we're going to see a more square barcode, of course, versus your traditional rectangular barcode. So it's actually going to physically take up less space for the same scan distance that we find acceptable. The damaged barcodes you may be receiving in, you may be printing out and moving product around, and in the course of it, some of it gets bumped, it gets scratched a little bit. A 2D scanner will actually scan any barcode that's damaged, whether it's 1D or 2D, better than a 1D barcode can scan. And so you have a little extra protection there where you may have a couple streaks through a label. And instead of having to manually enter that in, you have the advantage of having ability to scan that better than a 1D. And one of the more practical examples of the benefits of 2D over 1D would be for the users. When they're actually holding the devices scanning, they don't have to line up that red line perpendicular to the barcode. They can actually scan at any angle. They can twist their arm sideways, upside down. That's irrelevant because it is a rapid camera and an imager for 2D barcode scanning. So there's benefits on the barcode labeling side that you have within your facility, and then there's benefits on the scan side for 2D as well. So hopefully that explains a little bit of some of the benefits there for you guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Will. That definitely helps get an understanding, because I believe a lot of people are still kind of in that transition stage of trying to understand how 2D could benefit them, and if it's something worth moving into if they're currently using 1D barcodes within their operations as well. So as we kind of talk about barcodes, riteSCAN can help your help customers really achieve greater inventory accuracy through the data validation that takes place during the stock take process, as well as every day when receiving raw materials or doing warehouse transfers or picking orders. And that data validation really begins with the use of barcodes throughout the warehouse and all of the processes that are taking place. Barcodes are going to help validate the stock codes, the location, the lot numbers, the serial numbers, and much more to improve your operators' counting processes, and as well as improve your operators' picking performance and accuracy. That's just the very beginning of things. It also helps streamline the amount of time that it takes to perform these transactions. Through scanning a barcode, it can reduce the amount of time that it takes operators to perform these transactions versus having to either manually enter information or manually write down information. It's much more streamlined using barcodes and rapidly going into each of these fields that require this data. These are some of the validations that take place to help prevent errors before they are able to get downstream, to cause even larger issues within your inventory processes, and then you have to scavenger hunt back to really find the root cause. The first one we're looking at here is validating the operator is performing a count for the correct warehouse and bin location that they're supposed to be performing the stock take for. riteSCAN's not going to allow an operator to try to count information for a warehouse or a bin location that wasn't set up with that stock take. So it prevents that error before they can even begin the count process, reducing them from wasting time counting a location that they might not even be supposed to be counting and things. Through the use of barcoding, inventory also allows the scanner to perform the detection process between stock codes that may be very similar parts or SKUs. So imagine trying to read a small stock code number on a part in which the part number only differentiates by one digit, and trying to differentiate which one I'm counting and what digit that is. riteSCAN now does the detection work to prevent the operator from counting the wrong stock code and getting the wrong miscounts with associating that stock code. Also, what if my inventory is lot traceable? Can you imagine manually trying to decipher all of the different lot numbers on products? And maybe you've done that today, or you've been a part of that. You know that experience and how difficult it is to understand and read all of those lot numbers and then manually enter that data and report it back to SYSPRO for it only to be entered by a keyboard in the front office again. So it's very error prone to entering the wrong information and collecting the wrong information to set your inventory up for failure. riteSCAN helps prevent those errors. So when a stock code is lot traceable, it requires the operator to scan that lot number into the system, as well as reporting that information directly back into SYSPRO. There's a few different settings that allow you to either validate or create new lot numbers. So if you want operators, if they find a lot number in inventory that isn't there, it allows them to create that new lot number that they just found. Or you can also set up the system to validate it. So if they find a new lot number that's not supposed to be there, they can take the action and the steps needed to get that new lot number into the system and understand why it's there as well. So riteSCAN offers a number of settings that can help you match the stock take process and preferences to what your operational processes are. You can set up a variety of settings in riteSCAN for all of your operators or set up different settings for specific operators. If tickets are used in your stock take process, or if you only capture data based on stock code, you can configure riteSCAN to actually match that process that you have within your operations. You can also configure the system to use the increase or replace capture methodology that you may be using within your operations, or how you're wanting to perform that count process, whether it's a cycle count or maybe it's an annual inventory that you're performing. So there's different processes that you may want to use and set up within your operations, and you can definitely configure riteSCAN to fit those processes. There are a number of other settings also that allow you to really streamline your stock take processes that are going to fit your needs to help streamline things, increase that accuracy, and make it overall more efficient within your stock take to perform this, and make it not such a big task to accomplish. Magilite is actually one of our customers out of Massachusetts, and the company actually manufactures and distributes high performance material for upholstery, wall coverings, fashion accessories, and footwear. They employ about 140 people and operate in a 165,000 square foot facility. One of their biggest challenges each year, Magilite does a massive annual inventory that requires double the staff to conduct this. And this takes a considerable amount of time and downtime within their operations to go through this inventory process each year. Because riteSCAN is so easy, they're actually able to train their people in 30 minutes or less to use riteSCAN and actually go out and perform these count processes. So what they actually do is Magilite purchases temporary riteSCAN licenses for this 1 month period just to double their staff. They hire an extra 20 temp workers to do this annual inventory process using riteSCAN. And this allows them to get more people on the floor at the same time going through these count processes with the efficient best practices that riteSCAN has put in place to capture the data out on the floor and directly send that into SYSPRO. And this really ultimately helps shorten their annual inventory process, reducing their downtime as well. So Magilite has seen a tremendous amount of improvement within their inventory operations, being able to get that done much more efficiently and much faster within their operations. So now I'm going to kind of turn the presentation over to Will Barnett from emkat, and he's going to talk about some of the latest hardware trends as well as hardware options that are being used out in the marketplace.
Thanks again, Ryan. So we're getting a lot of questions from our customer base lately and our partners about what is going on with the future of devices here. People are seeing some turnover in some of the equipment out there. There's a lot of new equipment getting released. There's a lot of questions about what's going on with Windows, where is this Android coming from, and some of the new capabilities of the hardware that's out there. So I want to go over what I would say are the hottest trends right now in the hardware industry for management and for general hardware purchasing. One of the first big ones that everybody is talking about now is a management platform called SODI. SODI is a mobile device management tool that allows your IT staff or management staff to be able to have a single pane of glass to view all of their devices. So not only do you get to see your mobile computers, not only do you get to see your thermal printers, but you can see laptops, you can see cell phones, you can see everything down to the application level. You have control for these. And so we can put fences around geolocations and tell them to wipe your devices when they walk out of your facility. Or maybe you want them to alert you if someone walks out with one of your devices, and we can wipe it clean so they can't access your secure data. We have a lot of control where now your staff, if you have multiple locations, can go into a single pane, log online to a cloud hosted server, and be able to update all of their equipment remotely. So there's no more of the shipping a device back to the other location to get the latest version of riteSCAN loaded, or having to update the wireless settings. All of this can be done remotely now. And it's a phenomenal tool. There's a simple, it's usually about $4 a month. It's a very, very popular tool that everybody's looking at because of the time savings from the management team. So that's going to be one critical piece here. Another very popular one is going to be NiceLabel. So some of you may be familiar with NiceLabel. NiceLabel is a common platform for the label printing piece here, but really the automation edge of this is a lot of our customers are seeing some serious time savings and advantages by automating certain parts of printing. Most commonly, we'll see this in receiving. So instead of you having to predetermine what you're going to print out, print those labels out, and then go apply them, you can have them print on the fly on something like a mobile printer you see pictured here. So as you scan, we're actually pulling data from SYSPRO, from riteSCAN, and automating a print. So you're no longer clicking that button or having to make those determinations. You're only printing labels for things that you want to have printed and not printing in advance and building waste. So that's a really popular platform as well. Both of these solutions, SODI and NiceLabel, are backwards compatible. So if you don't have those solutions yet, or even if you have some older equipment, it will still work with a lot of that equipment. So you can implement it at any time. A big question we get a lot about right now is going to be on Android. And what we're seeing is from the major manufacturers like Zebra, which owns Motorola now, and Honeywell, which owns Intermec, over 50% of the devices, probably closer to 70% now, are shipping with only Android or Android options, as well as Windows Mobile. And so we are going to see a future with Android. In the next few years, we're going to see Windows start to go away as the platform for mobile devices. And so we're all thinking ahead now about how do we prepare ourselves for that future with Android. And so we'll talk a little bit about that with some of the devices. We will talk through some of the specifics on the Zebra and the Intermec Honeywell platform. Most commonly, we're going to see these MC series devices and the Intermec CK series devices. There's going to be some new options for 70 feet away scanning now, which is pretty incredible. Up until about a year ago, the furthest distance you could get was about 45, 50 feet. So now some of these new devices will scan a 2D barcode at 70 feet away while simultaneously scanning something up close. So there's a lot of interesting things going on there with longer battery life, as we said, Android capabilities, the ability to actually swap between Windows to Android in the future. So we'll talk about that. There's always going to be some interest that we're starting to provide on things like hardware as a service options and financing options as well. So we are seeing more and more of a move to OpEx versus CapEx for budgeting for these projects. And of course, as Ryan and I chatted about earlier on, 2D capabilities utilizing SmartScan, almost all scanners these days are going to have a 2D scan engine out of the box as a standard option. So 2D is really taking a stronghold here because a 2D barcode scanner will scan a 1D and a 2D barcode. So, you know, we do get a lot of questions about some of the legacy platforms as well. Maybe you've heard, or maybe you're using something like the MC9090 or the 9190, some of that legacy platform there. So I want to talk about a couple of the different hardware options as it stands right now and why you choose one versus the other. So the recommended platform at this point is going to be the MC92NO from Zebra, which is the Motorola legacy product line, and then the CK75, which is the brand new device from Intermec, which is a Honeywell brand. They are going to be much faster than anything you've been used to at this point. They, as a standard, will all scan 2D barcodes unless specifically chosen to downgrade. They will all do 2D barcodes. As we mentioned, up to 70-foot scans, especially on that MC92NO, that will scan even a little further. And what is really, really paramount at this point in time is, as we're thinking about device life cycles, whether you're thinking about coming onto the platform or you've had some legacy equipment that you're thinking is time to churn, both of these devices you can buy with Windows today, so you can go deploy it tomorrow, and they both have the option for, I think it's just about $100. In the future, you can simply swap whenever you're ready over to the Android operating system on the same unit. So it's future-proofing yourself for many, many years. So that way, as everything transitions into Android, you don't have to rebuy equipment. So this is the really critical point, is if there's any thought about upgrading devices or getting onto this platform, we really want to think about these two devices so you can future-proof yourself. Now, we do get a lot of questions about recertified used equipment. The legacy MC9. Yep.
Could you also just kind of touch a little bit on the life cycle of Zebra? I know there's a lot of different devices in the marketplace as far as brand names, and just kind of talk about the umbrella of Zebra and Motorola and Symbol and how that all works together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great distinction to make. So a couple of years ago, I think it is now, Zebra, the printer company, had purchased Motorola, and Motorola under that name had Symbol, a few other brands, and they're all rolled up under Zebra now. So when we talk about Zebra, we are talking about Motorola, we are talking about Symbol, we're talking about the traditional Zebra printers, the traditional regular barcode scanners. All of that branding is under the Zebra header now. The life cycle for a lot of this equipment is going to be somewhere in the 3 to 7 year range. Generally, it's a bit of a range, but it kind of depends on your workflow and how nice you are on equipment. We're seeing a lot of new devices come out of Honeywell as well. Honeywell has purchased Intermec, and on the barcode scanners and label printers, as well as Datamax, the label printer company. So all of those are under the Honeywell banner. So for the most part, we'll talk about Zebra and Honeywell, and they both have a large subset of equipment for label printing and barcode scanning underneath each.
Perfect. Thanks, Will.
Absolutely. It can get a little confusing, especially on some of the newer devices that are Zebra devices. They'll actually say Symbol now because there's a lot of branding conversations going on over there. So it can be a little confusing.
Yes.
So for the recertified devices, we get questions about this a lot. Specifically talking to Ryan's example, Magilite, we do a lot of rentals with recertified used equipment. So especially this time of year, if you need to expand your fleet for physical inventory, anything like that, we can do week-long, 2-week-long, month-long rentals. A lot of customers are looking to get onto the platform, but spend a very minimal amount, which we understand. And so the MC9090 has been a very typical platform for that due to its low cost. It's about 70% less cost than a new device. So we're looking somewhere around the $500 to $700 price point generally for these units. However, we do want to warn everybody that if you're on this platform already and you're just looking to expand a little bit, I think it's a perfectly fine option. If you are looking for a new deployment, technically these will work, but they will not future-proof you, and they are going to be limited in terms of their life cycle. So they are going to be a little bit slower, they're going to be less capable, they're not going to go as far. So please be aware of that if you're thinking about a new deployment. We can use some creativity on new equipment to help build that future proofing in for you to help out here. So that's kind of what's going on in our market right now. Again, the big takeaway from this is think about Android in the future and how we prep ourselves today. If anybody here is thinking about a transition at some point in the next year, there are some great trade-in dollars to get you onto this future platform and help protect you for that and help protect your investment.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Will. And with that being said, that kind of transitions us right into our next segment of understanding what's on the roadmap for riteSCAN and making sure that you're investing in the future. So when you're purchasing a warehouse automation system, you also want to be investing in the future. And with riteSCAN, you're doing just that. Some of the enhancements that we've made over the last year, if you haven't taken a look at our release notes or anything like that, I definitely encourage you to take a look at that. But just to name a few of the different things that have been released over the last year, there's been pallet tracking. So if you haven't had a chance to ever learn about pallet tracking, there's some videos and things like that out there as well. Freight apportionment was added to the product. Auto increment scanning, so being able to just simply scan your barcodes and go through a count process each time I'm scanning those barcodes. There's also been enhancements to smart scan and printing, being able to print different variables and auto generate lots within riteSCAN. So there's been a number of different enhancements throughout the year that have come into the product. And we also want to talk about what's next on our roadmap. So just as Will mentioned, we understand that Android is the wave of the future when it comes to hardware. With that being said, it is definitely forefront in our minds that Android device compatibility is something that is coming on the roadmap with riteSCAN. We are currently in the process of planning and developing out an Android compatible version of riteSCAN with an updated user interface that sticks to the core competencies of simple and streamlined experience for our users. We understand that that simple experience that just works is really what is the differentiator with our products, and we want to ensure that that is moving forward. This will also help us meet the needs of our customers with shifts in the marketplace for this hardware, moving towards ruggedized Android devices that give you some of these better capabilities to really help future-proof you in your investments that you're making in the future in hardware as well as software. We want to ensure that we're able to go along the road with you and ensure that you have everything you need, that it's changing in the marketplace, and keep up to date with those changes and continuously listen to our customers and bring enhancements to our customers that are needed in the marketplace. With that being said, we'll now open it up for any questions. Sue, if you want to facilitate the questions as they come in.
All right, thank you, Ryan. It looks like we have a question here for Will. Do any of the handheld devices on the market have the capability to display photos of the inventory during the scanning process?
That's a great question. From a hardware perspective, there are certainly camera options built into some of these devices, not all of them, so we would be very specific about what we would be choosing. Out of our recommended devices, the CK75 does have that option, as well as a few others that have been used and proven on the riteSCAN platform. However, without speaking too much, I might turn back to Ryan and ask about the capabilities of taking that data in and using that or displaying that. That would be more on the software side. But certainly from a hardware perspective, we can support it if that's an option. So.
Yeah, definitely, and that's kind of a request we've heard in the past. Right now, riteSCAN doesn't display any of the images or anything in riteSCAN, but with SYSPRO, there's ways to attach media files and things like that within the system. So it's definitely something that has been talked about within our development cycle, and really understanding, where our customers need to see that and how they need to see that information to ensure it's kind of that second step process of making sure that you're picking the correct items. So unfortunately, we don't do it today within the riteSCAN product, but it is something that we have heard in the past, and there would be ways to accommodate that in the future through either a custom plugin possibly, or just enhancements to the product. We're consistently listening to our customers' needs to enhance it. And especially with Android, that really has opened our gates from a development perspective to add a lot more functionality as well.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. This next question is also for Will. Will, does emkat preload riteSCAN on the handheld devices?
Great question. So yes, we fully provision the devices, and our goal is that when they arrive in your hands, they are 100% ready to go. They have your wireless profiles, they have your custom user configurations. So we do a lot of things like lock down the screens and the devices so the users can't access games and music and email. They can only access the riteSCAN application. We'll call that kiosk mode, as well as loading the riteSCAN application, making sure that their server address is correct, and that all of the customizations, whether it's auto enter, auto tab, things like that, are all figured out. We also take it another level for some customers that require custom data parsing. We will do all of that configuration in advance as well. It's all part of the service we offer through the hardware that you buy from us, and we handle that whole piece, so that way you're able to go live and deploy in an incredibly short period of time, and there's not a major learning curve for the customers.
Okay. This next question is for Ryan. Does riteSCAN adjust inventory when it posts to SYSPRO during a stock take? Could you explain a little more about that?
Yeah, so the way that it actually works, it doesn't adjust inventory at the time that the operators are scanning. Simply what riteSCAN is doing at that time is collecting all the data and putting it into a basically what I call a temporary holding area within SYSPRO. And then once all of that data is actually collected and viewed within SYSPRO, the adjustment isn't made until the actual supervisor or warehouse manager accepts the stock take. So when they actually view all the inventory that was collected, they can make any of the necessary adjustments ahead of time if they need to recount something or go looking for product that's missing. They can go through all of their steps necessary to get that count as close to possible. And then once they aren't able to do anything further, the operator can accept that inventory, and that happens in SYSPRO, and that's when the adjustment actually takes place to inventory, closing out the stock take.
Okay. This next question is for Will. Will, you mentioned trade-in dollars. Can you talk a little bit about how that process works?
Absolutely. So I would say that at this point in time, Zebra is a little more structured with how they offer their trade-in dollars for their label printers and their handhelds. But certainly there are options across the board. But how they handle it best is basically whatever device you have that is any sort of scanning device with a screen on it, or any sort of mobile or small printer can be traded in against any new equipment. And so what they'll usually do is cut you a check between generally $50 to $500 back on the equipment that you purchase. So it isn't based on what you trade in, it's based on what you buy. So in the case of something like some of these new handhelds, you may get $250 back per unit for trading in even old junk you have sitting around in a box. So there's a whole lot of value to that. If people utilize those services, generally there's a couple other interesting little bonuses we can tack on with that service as well to help drive that cost down. So there's a lot of creativity we can do. And for anybody considering it before the end of the year, Zebra is very aggressive. And so there's a whole lot of things going on right now to help drive that cost down further.
Okay. All right. Well, this next question is also for you. Can customers still use devices that they've been using after sunset dates on Windows Mobile, etc.?
Yes, that's a great question, and everybody's asking that right now. So when Windows, over the next couple of years here, will sunset, they will end all support for Windows CE and Windows Mobile, which is the platform on all mobile handhelds. That's why you're seeing our industry all go to Android. The devices will still work. So it's not like you're going to wake up one morning and they don't turn on anymore. They will still absolutely work. They're just not going to get the updates. They're not going to get the bugs fixed. They're not going to get the patches. Nothing applied to it, which isn't necessarily the end of the world. It just means that we're going to start to see a lot more issues creep up, a lot more troubleshooting where we can't reach an end because there's no help on that platform anymore. And so certainly it could still be used. It will just be unfortunately kind of a throw it away when it breaks type situation because it won't be supported any longer.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, that looks like the end of our questions, and it looks like we're about at the end of our time today. We would like to thank everyone for joining us, and watch your email for announcements about upcoming webinars.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.